The yellow sands have swept across 3,000 years, war chariots crushing the dreams of kings. If you ask where hegemony may be found, the city of Megiddo still runs red with blood. Today, we turn our gaze to the Shuwudwin H century BCE, to that ancient land favored by the sun god Riot, also filled with slaughter and conquest. What we are about to tell is a battle recorded on the walls of temples, regarded as the first battle in human history, with detailed written documentation, the Battle of Megiddo. This is not merely a war, this is the rise of an empire, a moment when the order of the ancient world was completely reshaped by thunderous force. Please follow my voice as we pass through the mist of time and return to that age of roaring chariots and arrows falling like rain. The beginning of the story must start with Egypt's New Kingdom period, the fifth pharaoh of the Shuwudwin H dynasty, Thutmose III. This was a ruler called by historians the Napoleon of Egypt. But at the beginning of his reign, Egypt's territory was not as vast as people imagined. To the north, in Syria and Canaan, there stood a kingdom called Kadesh, which united more than 330 local rulers, forming a force capable of challenging Egypt's dominance. For Thutmose III, this was not merely border harassment, but a direct provocation against the earthly embodiment of the sun god. The pharaoh was a divine king, the ruler of Upper and Lower Egypt. His authority could not be desecrated. Thus, in the 22 ND year of his reign, around 1457 BCE, Thutmose III personally led his army. Fr. The frontier fortress of Tijaru, in the Nile Delta, and embarked on a northern campaign. His goal was only one: to completely crush the rebel coalition and push the empire's borders to the ends of the world. The marching route of the Egyptian army was the first breathtaking moment of the battle. From Gaza northward to Megiddo, there were three possible routes. The two northern roads were flat and wide, bypassing Mount Carmel. Longer, but safe. To the south, however, there was a path called Aruna, a narrow pass winding through mountains and cliffs, barely wide enough for one man and one horse. If a large army passed through, its formation would stretch for miles, unable to support itself. If ambushed, it would mean total annihilation. All the generals knelt before the pharaoh and pleaded, "My lord, how can the body of 10,000 chariots risk such a dangerous path? Please take the main road, and let us crush the enemy head-on." However, Thutmose III displayed astonishing intuition and courage. As a military genius, he coldly looked over his generals and said words that would be remembered for ages. "I will take the path of Aruna. Let cowards take the wide road. True warriors, step across the enemy's throat." The pharaoh did not merely declare it. He personally walked at the very front. Imagine that scene. The blazing sun scorched the bare rocks. The narrow pass was filled with sweating soldiers. Chariots were dismantled, their parts carried forward with difficulty. Horses neighed at the edge of cliffs, one misstep away from falling into the abyss. The entire army moved like a silent giant serpent, slowly advancing into enemy territory. Meanwhile, in the coalition camp outside Megiddo, the rulers were drinking and celebrating. They were gambling, betting that the pharaoh would not take the risky path, betting they still had time to gather their forces. Their intelligence said Egypt would need at least 5 days to pass the mountains, but they were wrong. When Thutmose III's vanguard appeared like ghosts at the exit of the Aruna Pass and quickly seized the strategic position of the Kaina Valley, the coalition commanders realized in terror that Egypt had already become a dagger piercing their heart. In just 1 day, the Egyptian army completed what should have taken 5 May Jodwin H 1457 BCE. At dawn, dust filled the plains of Megiddo. Thutmose III stood on his golden chariot, overlooking the battlefield. Before him stood the king of Kadesh and the coalition of 330 rulers. Their number of chariots was astonishing. 3 times that of Egypt. Their banners covered the sky. Their armor gleamed brightly, like a steel torrent stretching across the land before Megiddo. They held the high ground, backed by the city, seemingly invincible. But Thutmose III smiled. He knew that though the coalition appeared strong, they were divided within. 330 rulers meant 330 intentions. They lacked unified command and lacked the resolve to fight to the death. The pharaoh divided his army into 3 divisions. The left wing against the mountains, the right wing by the river, and the center, by himself, composed entirely of elite royal guards. Before the battle, the pharaoh stood before the army and delivered a speech. Soldiers, you are the children of Ra. Look upon Megiddo. Its gates are the gates to heaven. Today, those who fight with me shall gain glory, wealth, and eternal peace. Forward, let the Asiatics know that Egypt's authority cannot be challenged. As his words ended, he leapt onto his chariot, drew his bow, and shot an arrow into the enemy ranks. That arrow was the signal for the full attack. In an instant, thousands of Egyptian chariots advanced like a black storm across the desert, crashing toward the enemy lines. The course of the war, in a sense, had already been decided before it began. The Egyptian army was disciplined, with coordinated chariot and infantry tactics. Archers first covered the enemy front, with dense volleys of arrows, then heavy chariots, in wedge formation, pierced the enemy lines. Like red-hot blades, though the coalition had more chariots, they were lighter, usually carrying only 2 soldiers. Egyptian heavy chariots carried 3, a driver, an archer, and a spearman. In close combat, they displayed terrifying power. Chaos began on the coalition's right flank. A force led by local rulers collapsed under the first charge of Egyptian chariots. Panic spread like a plague. None thought of resisting. Their only thought was escape. They abandoned chariots, soldiers, even their banners, and rushed toward the gates of Megiddo. But the gates became their tomb. According to inscriptions on the walls of Karnak Temple in Thebes, the scene was horrific. Defeated soldiers crowded at the gates, while the defenders, fearing Egyptian pursuit, refused to lower the bridge or open them. Soldiers climbed the walls, using torn garments as ropes, pulled up by those above, bodies piled like mountains. Cries filled the air. The Egyptians had the chance to enter the city and end the war. But at that critical moment, they were distracted by immense wealth, chariots, gold, weapons, and jewel-studded scepters scattered across the ground. Greed stopped the pursuit. The gates of Megiddo closed shut. After the battle, Thutmose III angrily rebuked his generals. If my army had taken Megiddo at that moment, Tode's spoils would be countless times greater. But history has no if even, so Egypt still achieved a great victory. Although the battle had ended, the campaign was not over. The gates were closed, but inside were all the rebel rulers, including the king of Kadesh. They could not escape. Thutmose III showed his patience and coldness as a conqueror. Instead of storming the city, he ordered the construction of a massive siege wall, called the Wall of Thutmose, which encircled the rebels. The city was completely blockaded. This siege lasted 7 months. After 7 months, with no food left, the rulers crawled out and surrendered. When the king of Kadesh knelt before Thutmose III, raising his scepter above his head, the pharaoh did not kill him. because to the Egyptians, the highest form of conquest was not destruction, but submission. After the war, Thutmose III brought back vast spoils, thousands of chariots, gold, silver, livestock, and countless prisoners turned into slaves. More importantly, he brought back an imperial order centered on Egypt, spanning West Asia and North Africa. The significance of the Battle of Megiddo far exceeds that of an ordinary ancient war. It is the first military campaign in human history. With detailed written records, we are able to reconstruct it today, thanks to the thousands of lines inscribed on the walls of Karnak Temple in Thebes, records carved in hieroglyphs by Thutmose III's scribes, and the city of Megiddo left its mark in history. In Greek, Megiddo became Armageddon, the site of the final battle. In the book of Revelation, if you stand today on the ruins of Megiddo in Israel looking over the barren plains, you may still seem to hear the thunder of chariots. Fr. 500 years ago. That is humanity's primal desire for power, glory, and conquest. It is the birth cry of an empire, and the elegy of countless nameless soldiers. Though the dust of history has settled, the ambition of the pharaoh remains carved in stone, eternal, indestructible.